Now, Shereen Bhan caught up with the top leaders of India Inc. Listen in to what they made of the announcements made in this budget.
Sunil Munjal, let me start by asking you, overall, what do you make of the budget for the immediate term? Let me start by asking you that.
I thought it was a twin-track speech. It addressed some issues of the overall, but a lot of it covered government's intent over the next 5 years, directionally what they proposed to do. And as you said in your own opening comments, there was not enough detail, I presume it's in the annexures, to actually understand some of them in specific. But doing things like providing funding for NBFCs, providing recapitalization funding for banks, as also creating this separate instrument for old litigations. So there are a number of things which are actually quite impactful right away.
Sure, but enough to spur investment. And what about consumption, and especially the special excise duty on petrol and diesel? What do you make of that?
So I think it's a bit of both. So one of the things in the morning when we were, actually I was in the other room, in the morning we were discussing exactly this, that there is a problem right now. The headroom available to spend is very little. You have to figure out a way to generate more resources. So the surcharge on the top bracket of income tax, I think in today's world, while we may not like it, but it's a reality which you have to accept. And putting surcharges on things like fuel is something that pinches everybody. It actually impacts everything.
Absolutely.
Everything. It has a knock-on effect.
And the cost of business as well.
It has a knock-on effect. But if you see in the overall scheme of things, it may actually be a smart thing to do if you use that money well. So that's how we built our road network. Please remember. So the follow-on impact of that can be quite good if it's well managed.
Well, we don't know whether that is going towards capital expenditure or it's actually going to bridge the deficit. But Vikram Kirloskar, President of CII, let me come to you. Overall, does this unleash the animal spirits as we were talking in the morning, and what does this really do for the economy?
2.5 lakhs to 5 lakhs. I think that's a big jump. This is something CII has asked for also to continue the momentum on the corporate tax. So that's gone up. Okay, 250 crores to 400 crores includes 99%, more than 99% of number of companies, not value-wise.
Sure.
Understandable.
Value-wise, the big ones are still well out of the bracket.
But still, 400 crores is quite a reasonable number for medium-sized companies. I think it makes a big difference. I know a lot of the auto companies and second tier 2 suppliers are within that range, so it will certainly help them become more
For those of us who are watching and haven't caught the fine print, what Vikram Kirloskar is talking about is the corporate tax rate of 25%, which has now been extended to companies with an annual turnover of 400 crores. Earlier, it was only for companies with a turnover of 250 crores. Now that's been extended by the finance minister to 400 crores. Go ahead, sir.
So it will certainly help, I think, for a lot of companies. The thing I felt about the budget overall was they have a 5 trillion ambition, and we must try to achieve it. And she's giving directions on how they want to achieve it. I think that's the kind of a feeling that I got. There are many things they want to do. There are a lot of knots which are tied up, like income tax, trying to build up trust. She talked about trust. I was happy about that because we talked about trust with her before. And the income tax, faceless income tax. I think it's fantastic. Those kind of things
absolutely.
are superb.
I think that was something that even as far as the startups were concerned, that is something that they talked about, doing away with scrutiny, etc. Of course, a lot will depend on implementation. But Sumant Sinha, some of the reform measures, or at least the roadmap that was laid out for CPSEs, even looking at divesting stake below 51% on a case-to-case basis. I'm not sure whether that includes public sector banks. She did in passing mention it, but I'm not sure whether that includes public sector banks. A PSU recapitalization of banks of 70,000 crore rupees. Overall, on the reform front, forward-looking, what did you make of it?
So I thought, Shereen, there were quite a few positive steps that were sort of interspersed in the budget in various areas. I think one was obviously the recognition of the financial sector requiring a lot more intervention from the government. The 70,000 crore recapitalization they talked about. The word NBFC came up in a number of different areas in terms of trying to address it. The RBI was given a lot more oversight capability into the NBFCs. So I think that whole area was addressed in a number of ways. I think I'll have to look at the fine print to see exactly what the impact of all of this is going to be. So I think that is one area. The second very fundamental thing that he talked about was actually a very big strategic philosophical shift almost, which is to privatize strategically more of the public sector units.
Yes.
And increasing the target from 90,000 crores from
To
last
over
year
1 lakh.
to actually 1,50,000 crores, which means they'll actually have to sell certain companies outright, including Air India, of course, which has been on the block. So and that's another big change. The third thing they talked about was, in fact, the whole aspect of having global manufacturing bids in certain areas, right? Electric vehicles, storage, solar photovoltaic and so on. That's going to be very interesting to see how that is implemented and how that plays out. That could actually be very, very big also, you know, if that is done properly. They're talking about giving investment credits in that area to make manufacturing a lot more sensible and commercially viable. So that's another very interesting area. I think beyond that, they also looked at the affordable housing area as being another job creation, kickstarter of the economy. And like that, there were a number of other things that were sort of spread out, which I think are fairly positive.
Yes, different sectors from research and development and a focus on startups to education. You know, there was a lot in the budget to be able to digest. But Anshuman, let's talk about the real estate sector, because she did, in passing, once again talk about real estate, talk about affordable housing, NBFCs as well. What do you make of the measures that were announced, especially on the tax front and the tax stops that have been additionally given?
Certainly, so the biggest challenge facing the real estate sector, now of course the economy is liquidity. So she talked about NBFCs capitalizing the banks, but the fact is we don't know the details. How will it, but at least she talked about liquidity. Second was the Prime Minister's Awas Yojana scheme has been actually successful.
Right.
It has really delivered lakhs and lakhs of apartments, and now with some tax incentives given is the positive side. But however, the government needs to also address the supply side. Now you've given enough incentives to buyers to go after affordable housing. Has the government given enough incentives to developers to address the supply side? I think going forward they need to do that.
She did extend the tax.
But even on the supply side, for example, this 45 lakh rupees apartment, now to get the supply of those 45 lakh rupees apartments, there should be enough incentive.
Absolutely, there should be enough incentive there. Unni, let me ask you, your big takeaways, big headlines, and does it spur investment?
I can straight away give a one-word answer for it, but the intent is to ensure that investment happens, because a lot more of the items that you spoke about are rural related and even in urban also, which targeting the voting people of the country. So what happened in the recent past within the country is the rural distress and also the money in the hand of the household investor having come down. So whatever is currently spoken is going to be spurring a lot more of money in the hands of the rural people. So what will they buy? They'll buy automobiles, they'll buy white goods. So I'm looking forward to a trickle effect of this to increase the capacity utilization.
But has that happened? Has it delivered on that, on being able to increase or enhance the disposable income in the hands of the consumer?
Well,
It didn't seem to suggest so.
Well, there are things that she spoke about indirectly in terms of the wage code bill going to be happening, which means the wages in the country are going to go up. So what does it mean? Indirectly, the consumer is going to have a little more money than what he is currently having.
Well, that
is going to be spent on food, is going to be spent on lifestyle.
But we will still have to see how that wage code develops, because it is going to be a center and a state issue. But Vikram Kirloskar, electric vehicles, a big theme, a focus area of the budget 2019. On balance, especially when it comes to the income tax exemptions that they talk about on interest paid, which amounts to more than a lakh of rupees, is that going to be able to spur demand?
I hope so. There's an investment going on in electric vehicles. I know that people are not comfortable with deadlines, but they're certainly all investing in electric vehicles, because that's the way the technology is going to go in the future, electric or hydrogen or whatever. It's going to go in that direction in the future. So there is, so long as there are no deadlines, I think the industry supports this. And this kind of incentive for electric vehicles will help. A similar incentive for infrastructure will actually even help even more in providing the power for this. But one thing I want to add in the budget, which I think was very important. We've been discussing with the government on to improve investment and demand. Look, how do we improve mutual trust between industry and government? And there's several things I think I was pleased that she addressed. One was on GST. All cases of GST, setting up a resolution
Litigation
panel
resolution,
to
yeah,
close the
yeah,
issues.
yeah.
I think there's several other points which were introduced, which I'm very, very pleased with.
One big departure from the past, and Sumant, let me get you to talk about that, because the Chief Economic Advisor indicated yesterday that he believes the time has come for the sovereign, for the Indian government to tap into foreign savings, and that announcement has been made in the budget. How do you see that playing out?
Look, I think it's absolutely essential because we obviously, one other aspect actually that is talked about quite a bit in the budget by the finance minister was infrastructure investments. And she talked about almost $1.5 trillion being required in the sector over the next 5 years, $300 billion every year. Where is that money going to come from? The government has to raise money from a number of different sources. We know that domestic liquidity is tight. It has to come from overseas. And therefore we need to create the right investment environment, and we need to tap into whatever sources of funding there are. And whether it's the bond markets, whether it's large infra investors, pension funds and so on, we have to encourage them to come into the country.
Gentlemen, are you all going back to your tax planners this evening?
So one of the points I would like to make,
Yes.
and we kind of missed that at the beginning, is that we have not just been asking for a tax rate, a corporate tax rate to come to 25. We've been asking for it to come to 18 now, because the entire world is moving downwards. They're now talking of 15, some are even talking of 12. So
well, that was an unrealistic expectation to have, given the fiscal challenges.
No, it's not unrealistic.
It's not I get that.
By the way, it's very real, and we've done enough work on it, and we are happy to, and we have shared this with the government, that this is a real possibility for India, because one is, as you drop tax rates, the revenues go up, and this is, we've seen in India 20 times, worldwide we've seen hundreds of times. Second is, there is a lot of information and data available. We now need to use intelligence to tap that to ensure both widening and deepening of the tax basis.
So data becomes the new danda. Gentlemen, unfortunately we're out of time. Sunil Munjal, Anshuman Magazine, Sumant Sinha, Vikram Kirloskar and Uni, thanks very much for joining us here with your first take on Budget 2019.
Well, on your screens now, Shereen Bhan in conversation with the Finance Minister.